I'm Felicity Steadman, and I'm the chairperson of the trust. I am together with my two colleagues, Nomonde Kezwa and Tefo Radipole. Tefo is one of our chairs, is one of our trustees as well in the trust. And Marion Scher, who will be joining if she's not here already, is also a trustee. And Nomonde works very closely with us and has been involved in two of our projects so far. So let me tell you, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves when we get to that point. Let me get to tell you a bit about us. So Craig, you can see my new screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the trust's mission. So our mission is to empower and train women and youth in particular, and with a focus on Black women and youth by advancing education and training in conflict management and dispute resolution, and to promote conflict resolution, reconciliation, and mutual respect and tolerance between various groups, the many groups in our very diverse South African society. So, so far, our projects have been aimed at young people, and I'll tell you later that we've run two projects. Um, in fact, the one project involved teachers, so they weren't necessarily all young, but the other project involved high school students. So that's our focus, and we're really pleased to have you here because we are now in the most fantastic position of having 6 videos made by South Africans in South Africa, and our acting coach and our filming producer. I've seen them both so far are here, and they assisted us in making really top-class videos that we can now use in our training rather than relying on training from on materials from other countries. In terms of our objectives in this project, which is one of the projects in our trust, the Peacemaker Project, is to introduce the concept of peer mediation to schools to facilitate effective resolution of conflict between students. So it has a very particular focus on conflict between students. We've focused on high school as a place to start because those students they're a bit more mature, and they can also take from school into their workplace, future workplace, education settings, and into society those skills. Although in the UK, peer mediation is used very effectively and more extensively in primary school. So if you can imagine what you'll see today, working very well with kids in primary school as well. And all the research seems to report that peer mediation skills, not just being a peer mediator, but also being exposed to peer mediators, equips students with skills and confidence to resolve and ease conflicts when they arise between students at school of their own age or younger, but also in broader settings. And you'll see there on that screen a picture of our mediators on the right-hand side and the two students who were in conflict. So our aim today is to introduce you to our trust and to introduce you to our project. And I must acknowledge a couple of parties before we start. First of all, the Temple Foundation, which is an American grant-making foundation who gave us a generous donation to enable us to make these videos. And we're just so wonderful to work with, easy, trusting, and interested in what we were doing. Then, of course, conflict dynamics, and I see Marion has arrived, because we work hand to hand with our team in conflict dynamics, and quite a few of the people on our screen and who attend our courses as trainers, run the courses as trainers, are drawn from conflict dynamics and are highly experienced mediators. And then I must also acknowledge Louise Sinclair and her daughter Sarah, Richard, and also 9mm Productions, who worked with us very closely to achieve these and create these wonderful videos. So thank you for being here and for really being so open to hearing what we are hoping to be able to offer in South African schools. So Tefo, I'm going to hand over to you now and ask you to briefly introduce yourself and make the keynote address. Just set the scene for why this is important in our schools.
Thank you, Felicity, and good afternoon and good morning and good evening to everyone. Yes, I'm a professional mediator accredited by the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution. I've worked with Felicity and many other colleagues now for pretty much over 3 decades in this field. So that's the first part of me. The second part of me, which I like whispering, is that I'm also an attorney. I'm a lawyer, a director at a law firm called Cheadle Thompson and Ason based in Johannesburg and Cape Town. My very brief keynote piece is really headed the need for peace. And that's the theme that runs throughout this project. The levels of violence in our country is unacceptably high. And this manifests in our homes, in the streets, and worst of all, in our schools and places of learning. Stabbings are commonplace in schools, even shootings, learners shooting educators, issues of sexual assault between learners, but worse still, sexual exploitation of learners by educators is highly prevalent. So all these things completely upset the balance that's required for learners to achieve the objectives that are really set out for them when they enroll at schools. It's supposed to be places of safety. The teachers are supposed to be parents away from home. Fellow learners are supposed to be brothers and sisters. But what we see is really the opposite of that. And what then happens with all of this is the impact is absolutely devastating on all the stakeholders, on the learners particularly, but also the communities at large. In particular, the psychological well-being of learners is damaged. In turn, their academic performance suffers, and there is no safety. Learners are afraid to go to school in general. When we grew up, school was a happy place to go to. The only people you were afraid of were your teachers, because corporal punishment was allowed at the time. But that was where the only danger really came from, not from fellow students and so on. There'd be a bit of a beef here and there, and maybe 1 or 2 boxing matches here and there, but that was really not common as it is now, and to the level that it is now. And of course, this violence then spills over into the communities, and then it's just a never-ending cycle. So this situation really needs to be rectified, and hopefully this project starts chipping away at this problem. Just to give an example of recent stats, very brief stats on some of these issues. 57 out of every 1,000 learners, for example, in South Africa experience violence in one form or another. So if you think of those numbers, according to people who study these things, this is at violence at schools that they experienced. And according to the people that collect these statistics, this surpasses the rates in the United States at the time these numbers were compiled. And if you remember, the States is full of mass shootings. So if our numbers are at that, it's quite frightening. At secondary schools, the monitoring survey by the DBE showed that a high prevalence of security incidents in schools compared to primary schools, and this is it showed a much higher prevalence. For example, 42% of secondary schools reported no incidents of learners carrying weapons compared to 73% of primary schools. And I know I'm preaching very much to the converted, but I thought just to remind you and maybe shock other people into this reality. With regards to police involvement, 33% of secondary schools reported 1 to 5 incidents requiring involvement of the South African police, while only 8% of primary schools reported the same range. So these numbers go on, and they're quite frightening. But I think it's clear to everyone if you read the newspapers, listen to the news, and read the digital press and so on, that there's an absolute need for something to be done, because whatever is being done is not enough, and that there are other useful interventions that can be done. And we believe that this project that we are talking about today will go a long way in relieving this situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tefo. And so I think, as you can hear and well appreciate, the situation in our schools is dire. And our focus is going to be on helping students in the first place understand conflict, understand mediation, and work things out as far as possible between themselves as a place to start. So we're going to show a short video, a promotional video that is in fact available on our website already, and that is narrated by my colleague Nomonde. Nomonde, perhaps you can introduce yourself before we show the video so people know who you are.
Thank you, Felicity. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, depending on where you are on the globe. I'm Nomonde Keswa, as Felicity has already indicated. I am an internationally accredited mediator. I'm associated with Conflict Dynamics as a member of the panel of the mediators in conflict dynamics, as well as a director in conflict dynamics. I do voluntary work for the Conflict Dynamics Empowerment Trust when they conduct training in schools. So I am one of the trainers that they use. So the video you are going to see introduces the topic really that I'm going to talk about, which is peer mediation in schools. Thank you, Felicity.
Thanks, Nomonde.
School is where we learn, build friendships, and grow. But disagreements happen, sometimes leading to bigger problems. What if young people could find their own solutions right here at school? That's where peer mediation comes in. Imagine students helping classmates work through disagreements peacefully, fostering Ubuntu and understanding. Peer mediation is a voluntary and confidential process. Students in conflict meet with specially trained neutral student mediators who help their peers find their own solutions. It's about facilitating open communication, not assigning any blame. The benefits are enormous. Improved communication and conflict resolution skills, Students learn to express themselves clearly, listen actively, and brainstorm constructive solutions. It fosters empathy and leadership. It builds compassion, respect, and empowers mediators to become positive role models. It reduces disciplinary issues. Schools see a significant reduction in referrals, allowing teachers to focus on teaching. It's a simple, structured process aimed at empowering students. It starts with a referral or a request for mediation. Once the students have agreed to participate, the mediation meeting is held. This will be in a private, neutral space with trained mediators. The mediators explain the process and set ground rules, such as confidentiality and respectful listening. Each person then explains what happened, and this is discussed in depth. The mediators then help the students brainstorm solutions. If an agreement is reached, it may be written down and both students commit to it. They are more likely to stick to a solution they helped create.
The mediator helped us actually talk about it instead of fighting. We've worked it out, and now I feel so much better.
Being a peer mediator really taught us a lot about listening.
It's really rewarding to help other students find a way forward and to bring peace.
Peer mediation builds a stronger, more harmonious school community, reflecting the spirit of Ubuntu. It empowers students to be part of the solution and creates a positive, respectful learning environment. Want to bring the power of peer mediation to your school? Talk to Conflict Dynamics Empowerment Trust. Empower your school today.
There we are. And Nomonde is going to talk to us about really the concepts that she described in that video. So Nomonde, over to you. And we wanted to start with some of the feedback, didn't we, from the what the people who have joined us today have said. So I will start with that.
Start at slide 6.
Yeah.
If you can show slide 6 for me.
Yeah.
Yes. When we sent out the registration links for this launch today, we also did a short survey. Just 2 questions that we really were asking from the people who were registering. One is to how conflict manifests itself in your environment and what strategies you employ to manage that conflict. Slide 6, Felicity. Yes. What came through from that short survey that we did was, just in a summarized version, you see conflict in your environment taking place person to person. In other words, in a physical environment where there's bullying, there's and in the form, it takes a form of verbal bullying, gossiping, name calling, and there's sometimes physical violence. There's pushing and fighting, and sometimes it's targeting of an individual by an individual, or targeting of an individual by a collective, or by a group. It sometimes manifests itself through initiation practices in some schools, and there are disagreements, but these disagreements are not resolved. Then they grow to something bigger, like a fight. And also through group dynamics. And it shows itself through social exclusion, through alienation from groups or from peer groups. We might be able to see it in one of the videos where one of the students actually says, I'm excluded. I want to be part of this group, but I'm excluded. And some of the reasons that come through are social, some are relational, sometimes even of a racial nature. Then the response to how does your school manage conflict? These are the various responses. One, it takes a form of a disciplinary process. In other schools, or another response was, a teacher then engages with the students separately, and the teacher takes a decision. The teacher tries to resolve the problem. Alternatively, there are assignments given to the students in conflict as part of consequence management or restorative justice. In other ways, there's mentorship, there's counseling, or they invoke a code of conduct that they have at the school. Or in other instances, there's mediation. Other instances, they involve parents, and sometimes it even gets to head office. So what we are bringing in is another strategy to add on the other strategies that the school community already engages in. And that is what we refer to as peer mediation, which involves the students themselves to resolve their own issue. We believe that as part of human nature, if you are part of crafting a solution to your own problem, that solution is likely to be more enduring than a solution that is imposed on you. Therefore, we think that if students find their own solutions through their own peers, that solution is likely to endure, or they are likely to stick to that solution that they helped create. So what is a peer mediation? From the video, we talked about a voluntary process. Why voluntary? People must choose that this is the process I want to be involved in. Because if they are not, they don't go into it voluntarily, it's imposed on them. Chances are that they are not going to commit to it.
Right.
And the process is confidential. Why so? If you want people to speak from the heart, to say everything that they need to say to find a lasting solution, they have to be assured that what they say is not going to find its way to other ears elsewhere. It must remain within the four walls where it was said. And it must happen in a private and a neutral space where there is nothing threatening to the parties. And it's conducted by other students who are specially trained. We refer to those as peer mediators. As you had seen in the video, there were peer mediators who conducted the mediation themselves, but they must be trained to conduct the mediation process. And they sit with the students in conflict, as I said, in a neutral space, and they listen to what happened from each party's perspective. What happened? How do they feel? How has it impacted them? and what would they like to see going forward. They brainstorm solutions through that mediation process. And finally, they agree to what they think will work for them. And once there is a solution, they may want to write it down as a form of commitment to the solution. And in the process, the mediators encourage open communication. They don't assign any blame. They don't find wrong or right, but they try to find how the parties see the issues from their own perspective and what their interests are, what their needs are, what their priorities or fears are. And then they try and address all of those in the mediation process. All of that is between peers. There is no adult. As I said, it's a very simple structured process. And it aims at empowering students. The students, firstly, empowering the students that are in conflict to be able to find other ways of resolving their issues without violence or without fighting. It also empowers the mediators themselves because it gives them the skills to be able to help other people resolve the issues that they have. It starts, as I said, with a referral or with a request for a mediation. And it may not necessarily be a referral or a request. It may be something that has cropped up in the field of play. And the mediators can come in when something flares up and sit with the two parties or whatever the number is of the parties in a neutral space to try and find a solution to that. It may not even lead to being a referral or a request. But once the students have agreed to participate, as I said, it's a voluntary process. So the parties must agree to participate in the process. Then the meeting is arranged in a private, neutral space where there will be no threatening, the environment will not be threatening to them. And then the mediators explain the process, how it works. They set the ground rules such as we said, confidentiality, respect, active listening. And each person then explains, as I said, what happened. And this is discussed in depth because what you want to do is to unearth what is the need here that is being expressed, that has culminated in either the fight or whatever was the manifestation of that conflict. Then there will be a brainstorming of the solution. And if there's an agreement, it will be written down and both students commit to implementing their own solutions. What are the benefits to the benefits of the peer mediation? To the students, it provides, it's a learning experience. Students learn to express themselves clearly, and they learn to listen actively, and they learn to brainstorm constructive solutions. It builds compassion, it builds respect, it empowers mediators to become positive role models. How so? At school, because they have these skills that they've learned, they are able to portray a positive image to others. But they can take the skills, because once you learn a skill, it's a skill that goes with you. Even in instances outside of a school environment, because they are empowered, they have the skill to resolve conflict. They can employ those skills anywhere they go. And for the school environment, from the pilots that we have done in other schools that we've gone through to train, we learned that there is a significant reduction in referrals when there's a conflict. These don't go to the teachers. They remain within the student body, and the students themselves are able to resolve their own problems. And it allows the teachers time for their primary responsibility, which is teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomonde. It would be great if you have any questions as we're going through this and it's beginning to stimulate your thinking. Just pop your questions in the chat and we will either answer them in the chat or pick them up later. But now that it's sort of being revealed to you, it might get you thinking about, how can this really work? How does it work in practice? Luckily, it's very well established around the world. In America, it's often referred to as fussbusters. The mediators are called fussbusters. Here in the UK, they're very much more peer mediators. So let's have a look at our how it works. And so I'm going to start off by just giving you the project steps of engagement with a school, and then we'll have a look at the actual training. So if I go to project steps and talk through that to begin with, let me share my screen. Are you seeing that, Craig?
It's still loading. It's coming up.
Okay. Project steps. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there we are. All right. So this is not a quick fix band-aid solution that you just have available like a sick room. One of the facilities at school. For it to work, we need to start with engaging school leaders, and that's the principal, senior management, senior teachers, for them to hear a bit about what this involves, and for us to hear about what their challenges are around student-to-student conflict, and also to hear what is currently done when there is this sort of conflict. And judging by the responses we had in our questionnaire, it ranges. There were a lot of responses that were around discipline, taking decisions, and that sort of thing. And then there were some about we talk and we try and bring the students together. There were quite a few that involve single students, and don't actually get to the bottom of the problem between the students, like counseling for a student, or coaching for a student, or mentoring for a student. And while those are great, and there's, this project would support those initiatives, we're talking much more about bringing students together, and as Nomonde has been emphasizing, empowering them to resolve conflicts of a certain level. Obviously, more serious acts of misconduct would not necessarily start with mediation. They would immediately go to a more serious level. Once the leadership have said, okay, let's give it a go, we need to then engage staff and students. It may be a meeting, it may be an online meeting explaining it. And it's really helpful if there's a champion in the school, either the head or, maybe it's the head of counseling, or it's a senior teacher, staff member who becomes a champion of this project and this idea, and will drive it through and keep it running alongside all those other conflict management strategies that schools have in place. The next stage is selecting and training students to be peer mediators. And as I said at the beginning, we've focused very much on high school students. because there's a level of maturity. The biggest problems, as we heard from Tefo, are in high schools. And also high school students will take those skills out into their work community and further education. The students are selected by a sort of mix of decision-making processes. You don't want necessarily the prefects because they are seen, or they may be seen in certain schools as authority. I know that in certain schools they're also seen as leaders. And but you also don't want to exclude others who haven't been nominated for those leadership positions and who are very good at sorting out problems between their peers. So it would be a mix of perhaps students voting, perhaps students being recommended by teachers, or even applications by students. So, you know, the student body would be told this is what's going to be happening. If you're interested, here's an application form, and write 2 paragraphs about why you think you would be a good mediator. And then you would select a group. And then the training would take place, and that's where we bring a unique experience of many, many years in training. And we have a training product that we've already worked out and piloted, and we now have these 6 fantastic videos. And then there would be a next step of engaging the students, the student body, in how to access mediation. Do they go straight to the mediators? Do they go to the mediator champion and say, this is our problem? How do they get to the mediation? Does it just happen spontaneously on the playground? Or ideally you want a separate room, as Nomonde said, a private neutral space where it can take place. And in some schools, they'll have posters all over the place that say, if there is a conflict, contact your mediators. These are the mediators. And then we need to support and mentor those student mediators because they're going to work in pairs, so they have support of one another. But it's pretty grueling, and they're dealing often with high emotions, difficult situations. So some support and mentoring, and we offer that as an ongoing support service. And then you want to continually evaluate the initiative. What sort of issues are being brought forward? What are the settlement rates? How long do the mediations take? And how often is it used? You don't want to have this program and it's not accessed. So there needs to be a project plan, and we have skills and experience at all levels. So then let's look at the course, the actual course, because that's where these videos are used to support the teaching. It's broader than what we do when we're training adult mediators, lawyers and others who know they want to be a mediator and are often mid or later level professionals. Here you're talking about young people who come from homes that may be either high conflict or conflict avoidant, or maybe they are very used to managing conflict in their homes in a constructive way, but they'll all come with a different understanding of conflict and what the best way is to approach a conflict situation. So there's quite a bit of peace and conflict. What is conflict? What are your options when you're faced with conflict? How do you get into a problem-solving conversation rather than a confrontational conversation? We talk about the role of the peer mediator. Nomonde emphasized impartiality, neutrality. You don't take sides, you don't make decisions except on process. And so what are you doing? Well, you have a process and you have a set of principles such as confidentiality, and then you have very honed active listening skills. So you are listening deeply, not just for what happened, but also how people felt. I felt left out. I felt bullied. I felt discriminated against. You're really helping people understand how what happened made them feel. And you do that through active listening skills. And then our videos will show each step in the mediation process, each phase, and there is a lot of role playing. So all of this learning happens through exercises, role plays, case studies. So far, the course that we have developed is a 10-hour course. We rolled it out over 2 days in a school. It could be done in modules of 2 hours once a week. It could be done online. It can be done in person, obviously much preferable in person, but it's a very flexible teaching program. And then let's just have a look at how a peer mediation, we'll now look at our role play. And let's have a look at the first video. We can't, in the time available, show you all of the videos, but I thought that might be good to see the first video, which is the preparation phase. We'll just see half of it. And in this preparation phase, the mediators meet with one person. It's the complainant, let's say, the person who's brought this to the attention of the teacher and of their parents, and they're feeling bullied. So the first phase, the preparation phase, the mediators meet with each party separately to hear what's happened and to talk to them about mediation. And then once they've understood mediation and they've agreed this seems like a good thing to do, then they're brought together for a mediation session. It's not like counseling. It's not many sessions. It's an hour or so. And you then have the opening of the mediation session. You then have a period of trying to understand the problem and really digging deeper, exploration. And then you have the kind of problem-solving stage, which is around, well, what are the options? What could you do or offer to address this person's upset, or the rumor that has started, or the gossip that is going around? What could you do to ameliorate it, or what could you do to ameliorate it? And then it gets to conclusion, where what they've agreed is written down, and they literally shake hands, and that's the end of it. And perhaps that's an hour. So we've got a video for each stage, and I'm going to show you the first meeting, one of 2 meetings in the preparation phase, and then show you the conclusion phase and how it was resolved. And you'll see the transformation from the beginning to the end.
Hello, Jaden. It's really lovely to meet you. My name is Pia. I'm in grade 9, so I'm just a year above you.
Hi, Jaden. I'm BK. I'm so glad that you've both agreed to meet with us. Your teacher asked us to step in and see if we can help resolve the situation between you and Isha.
It's just going to turn into another chance for her to bully me.
Is that what normally happens?
She lies about me all the time. I can see that you're worried that this is just going to be a repeat of what you've already experienced. The mediation is quite different. Let me explain how it works, and maybe that will put your mind at ease. To start, we'll introduce some things. We have some rules that have to be followed, and some framework that we have to stick to. You'll each be invited to speak. No interruptions. If there are interruptions, we'll put a stop to that. You'll be allowed to continue. So you have as much time as you need to express yourself. That's good. So we're just checking in with you, well, both of you, to make sure that you're ready. So, how are you? I'm still a little scared. She cuts me out of conversations, and she doesn't include me like she used to. I feel lonely, ignored. And maybe scared that she'll do that here, and I won't get a chance to speak properly.
I can see that this is very upsetting for you, and we promise you that won't happen here. We've already laid out that both of you are going to have a chance to speak uninterrupted, and we need you to trust us on that. I can see that you want to have a conversation with Asha without being excluded, and that's great. But there are rules too to help keep everything above board. Asha's going to have a chance to speak from her perspective without you interrupting. Both conversations are going to be equal.
Okay. We'll talk about the key issues and the problems that have come up. You've already identified that you feel isolated. So we're going to work through that and talk about it, as well as anything else that comes up. Is that okay? That's perfect. Thanks.
We have to make sure that the conversation is balanced and that no one is taking over. We will encourage Asha to speak to you rather than to us. After all, this is about your relationship, not ours.
Okay. Now, we want you to listen to this agreement to make sure that we're all starting from the same place.
The rules are very simple. 1, I'm willing to try and solve my problem through mediation. 2, there should be no name calling or put downs. 3, one person talks at a time. Sound alright so far?
Yes.
4, we both need to tell the truth. 5, there should be no physical fighting, yelling, or throwing things. 6, everything that happens in mediation must be kept confidential unless it really can be shared. And finally, 7, if anyone were to say or harm anyone in the room, the mediator must report to the principal.
Those sound good. Remember, our role here is just to facilitate the conversation. We're trying to create an environment that is a safe space for the both of you to talk. So, how are you feeling now? Are you comfortable with going ahead after hearing the agreement?
Yes. This all actually sounds really nice.
Great. We're going to go check in on Asha now. While we're doing that, please start thinking about something you want to say at the start about what has happened. And think about what you'd like to get from this mediation.
Hi, Asha.
Okay, so there we had the first student talking to the mediators, and by the end, they understand a bit more about what's happened, and he understands what he's in for if he wants to go ahead with the mediation. And it would be 10 or 15 minutes each, and it's voluntary. So if one of them says no, well, then it doesn't go ahead. So the mediators really need to understand mediation and be able to kind of sell it, how this would be a good opportunity. And you could see they were relaxed, they were friendly, they were engaged, and he transformed from feeling he was just going to be bullied again into recognizing that this might be an opportunity. Then that might happen earlier in the day, and then at the next break, they might then come into the mediation. And so they would then be in the same room together. And in our role play that we videoed, the little Jaden pulled his chair to the side and wouldn't even look at the person he felt had been bullying him, Pierre. And eventually he turned his chair around and they were engaged with one another. And now we're going to see the conclusion, what that might look like, and how they, and you'll have a sense of how they got there. So let me call that one up and share. I saw Barney's comment saying these kids are pro. Well, they were wonderful, and I can really thank Louise and Sarah for coaching them and supporting them and getting them to this point. So this is our closing.
Okay, let me summarize what we have then. Sure. You're going to speak to your group of friends about the rumors about Jaden and tell them that they're not true. And you're going to put in the work to introduce Jaden to some people outside your friend group.
Yes. Jaden, you're going to try and make friends with learners that Asha introduces you to. And you'll stop relying on her and her group of friends.
Yes.
Our last question is how to deal with Asha's reputation. We've all agreed that what we've discussed here is confidential. Neither Asha or Jaden's reputation can be helped unless your teacher knows that there's been an agreement and there's no longer an issue between the two of you. So, what needs to be said? And do you each want to say something to your teacher, or should I tell the teacher?
I would like to tell the teacher that everything is now fine again between me and Asha.
Yeah.
I would also like to tell the teacher that the rumors about me cheating aren't true, so that they know that I'm not a cheat.
So that they aren't influenced by what they may hear.
Yes.
Asha, what would you prefer in terms of what the teacher knows about this session?
I think it's safe to say that some things were said on both sides that are not true. I don't think we should tell a teacher who said what, just that it was all a misunderstanding.
So Jaden can tell the teacher that everything is under control and you have a plan of action going forward. And in particular, that the rumors aren't true.
Yes. Now, what about your parents? I'm really worried that Jaden's mom is going to tell my mom what has happened. If my mom comes to me and asks, I will just say that it was all a misunderstanding and that it's all resolved now. Jaden, what do you think? I'm fine with that. I don't want to cause any problems for Asha. I just want to be treated fairly and kindly. All right, so you both won't say anything to your parents about what is happening unless they ask. If they ask, you just say everything is fine and you've sorted it out. Yes.
I'd like us to check in with each of you next week to see how you're doing. Is that okay?
Yes. Well done, both of you. There's one last question I just want to ask. How are you feeling now? Relieved. Because I know now how Asha feels about me joining their group. And I know now that the rumors are going to stop. It's like I'm lighter. And that just makes me feel so much better.
Asha, any final words on how you feel now?
I actually feel relieved too, because it's over. I can tell that Jaden is willing to change how he sees me, and that he knows that I didn't stop the rumors. And I'm grateful for that. So yes, I'm feeling much better now. And how do you feel about your friend, Bipasha? They played a part in this. They made me look like a bad person in the process. So I can't really brush them aside. But I can say that I must just be careful what I say about other students as well. I guess I learned not to trust.
It would be a pity not to trust anybody. Perhaps about how you say things and being a bit more cautious.
Yes, definitely. The bottom line is to treat others the way that you want to be treated.
All right. So at this stage, how they got from A to Z is a mystery for you and for our trainers to work with the students to learn the skills to be able to do that. From getting to hostile to happy is really always a challenge. So, Tefo, I'm going to turn to you in a moment to close, and then we'll open for questions. Maybe I can just talk about next steps. And I think, first of all, nothing is possible, and certainly not at this level of professionalism, without sponsors. And I hope you saw at the end of each of our videos made possible with the kind support of the Temple Foundation. So if you know of any funders who are interested in education, that would be very helpful to talk to us about. We are non-profit, obviously not for-profit trust. We do, however, have to provide materials and travel for the trainers, etc., etc. And so there are costs involved in that regard. Private schools are in a position to contribute to covering those costs, but state schools simply aren't. And I think I even saw something this morning on the South African news about subsidies to schools being cut. So there is no money in the system for this sort of thing. And so we would not be charging schools for this work. We would encourage them to print, we would ask them to print things for us, for example, training manuals and posters and so on, because they have those facilities already at the school. So our engagement with them would be, very carefully conducted around who can provide what and how to make it as cost effective and as possible. If you know of interested schools, and people in education perhaps in the education departments who would be open and interested to this sort of thing, please refer them to our website, and also just feel free to pass their contact details onto us. To me in particular, you will have my email address. And yeah, and any potential partners. It would be fantastic to work with NGOs in this field who are already doing work in schools, and we'd love to partner. We partner often. We've had 2 previous projects. Perhaps I can actually show you the pictures from those projects and tell you a bit about that. So we had a project in Phoenix Township during the yeah, here's Phoenix. Shortly after the violence in KZN a few years ago, and I think it was, here we go, yeah, 2022. And this is a group of the headmistress in the middle, and then her staff. This was just at the end of the pandemic, or it had just ended. And I think you should be able to see Nomonde there. Maybe Nomonde, you were taking the picture, but you were involved in the training with James Taylor. And
yes,
yeah,
yes, I was, but I'm not in the picture.
no. And they were, these teachers absolutely loved the training. It wasn't so much peer mediation as conflict management. And we said we wanted to start with the teachers, then roll out the peer mediation. So we can now go back to them with our videos and do some work with them on that. And then in 2023, Nomonde and yeah, there we can see Nomonde in the one picture, and I can see Siamboda here in another picture. And there was a whole team, Angela Duplessis, who's also in our group today, and others. Ingrid were involved, Ingrid Lewin, in training kids from 3 different schools who came together, 2 inner city schools who were state schools, and then a private school. And the private school supplied the facilities and they printed the materials. So that helped with the cost. They provided the refreshments, the lunches. They also provided a bus fare for the kids from the inner city schools, and our trainers volunteered their time, which I can't always expect because you know, it's a good amount of time. Just lastly, I didn't cover this, which is the teaching materials. So in terms of costs and so on, there's a workbook that the students get. There's a picture of the workbook on the right. There are worksheets, there are handouts, there's a trainer guide so that the trainers follow a guide. There are 5 videos. There are flip charts used and then potentially retained by the school. And then we would like to supply flashcards and posters to schools so they can put these things up. The posters can be put up to encourage people to come to mediation, and the students can use the flashcards to remind themselves of the ground rules and the process, and maybe some mnemonics to help with managing emotion and that sort of thing. So there's a sort of package that goes with each course, and so to have some partners and funders to work with us to provide this with schools would be fantastic. And of course, any mediators who are keen on this work and who are trained mediators and trainers themselves, please let us know. I'll send out a brochure to everybody who's attended, so that you've got something you can actually hand out to people, and also just refer you to our website. So thank you, everybody. And Tefo, I'm going to hand over to you. While you're closing, I'll just see if there are any questions that I can answer in the chat. But Tefo, if I can leave it to you to close.
Okay, thank you, Felicity, and thank you very much to everyone else and for participating from near, far, and wide, and also for all the great comments in the chat. I think I would, on behalf of the Trust extend once more our gratitude to the Temple Foundation for making this possible. I have to say thank you to Felicity and Norman there, to the coaches, to the actors, to the schools that contributed, responded to the questionnaires and made this even more relevant. So thank you very much. And we certainly would welcome and in fact request colleagues to send through lessons learned from similar projects that they may have had. I saw in the chat there was a program in Delft. There may be, which is a really problem-ridden area. Again, the usual problems that come from socioeconomic issues and left unchecked lead to some of these problems. So please, if we could please enrich this process and let's all help each other to achieve better peace so that our learners achieve the education that they so much deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tefo.
Thank you, Felicity.
And thank you, Nomonde, for your unfailing support and energy.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll end now. We're a little early. So if anyone wants to stay and ask any questions, feel free to do so. But if you need to leave, equally feel free to do so. Thank you very much for attending.